2017 Formula 1 season looked like if Mercedes and Sebastian Vettel were not there. I want to say thank you once again to Miguel. Yes, this comment is about 2015, but it's from this comment about 2015 is where I got this idea for 2017 from, so thank you once again. The opening race for the season is off to a track that next year will be returning as the season opener for the first time since 2019. It's the Australian Grand Prix down in Melbourne, Australia. Kimi Raikkonen on his Ferrari debut back in 2007, 10 years previous to this race here, 2017, he had dominated it basically with a hat trick of pole position, fastest lap and race win, and he repeats that feat out this time out as the sole Ferrari driver on the grid. He takes pole position in qualifying and then he translates that into a race victory. The opening race of the season, he takes the victory with the fastest lap. Max Verstappen, starting his first full season in the Red Bull senior team, finishes up in second place while his teammate suffers a retirement at his home race. The home race curse, very, very real this time out for Daniel Ricciardo, and Felipe Massa ends up rounding off the podium for Williams. Further down the grid in his first race of his first full season of Formula 1, it's points for Stoffel Van Dorn, and for Antonio Giovinazzi, it's points on debut as he's standing in for Pascal Wehrlein, who's recovering from injuries sustained in the off-season. Round 2, we're off to Shanghai for the Chinese Grand Prix. The race is on the weekend that I'm putting this video up. Kimi Raikkonen's flying high after his win in Australia, his pole position in Australia, and his pole position in China for him as well. 2 poles on the bounce for the Finn. However, come race day, the Red Bulls proved to be just a bit too strong for the Ferrari driver to live with, and it ends up being Max Verstappen going on to take the race victory this time out. From 13th on the grid, might I mention. Yes, 13th, not 16th. Verstappen would have started 13th here, and he would have won from there. Might I just remind you, he was 19 years old at this time. But it would have been a brilliant drive that would have seen Verstappen take the win. A brilliant opening lap, which would have seen him gain, 9 places he gained on that opening lap? In real life, I assume he would have done the same here, going from, 13th to 4th? It would have been a brilliant win for Max Verstappen, ahead of his teammate Daniel Ricciardo, making it a Red Bull 1-2 as they look to get underway this season. Daniel Ricciardo actually finally getting some points on the board in this season, while Kimi Raikkonen ends up rounding off the podium in P3. Round 3, the jump across to the Middle East for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Pascal Wehrlein comes onto the grid really to get his season underway after being out the first couple of races due to injury. But further up the grid, Daniel Ricciardo finished second place in the last race in China. He DNF'd in the first race, and he's starting off the third race weekend very strongly with getting pole position this time out in his Red Bull. However, like how the Red Bulls were a bit too quick for the Ferrari in China, this time out is the other way around, as the Ferrari of Kimi Raikkonen proves a bit too strong for the Red Bulls, or well, Red Bull really, as Max Verstappen retires from this race, his first of quite a few retirements this season actually, and Ricciardo goes on to finish in second place behind Kimi Raikkonen, taking his second race win of the season, and third place goes the way of Felipe Massa. So really the same podium as the first race of the season, just a different Red Bull driver finishing in second. But it'll be all smiles for Pascal Wehrlein further down the grid, as in his first race of the season, he scores points. The Russian Grand Prix is up next for the 4th race of the season, and Kimi Raikkonen truly is having a brilliant start to the season. It's continuing it this time out in Russia as he goes on to take his second hat-trick of the season. Pole position, fastest lap, and race win. He is having a very, very strong start. His Ferrari car, his SF70, is proving very, very quick for him. SF70H. Sorry, I was close. Regardless of the car name, it is proving to be working very, very well for the Finnish drivers. He takes his 3rd race win in 4 races, ahead of Max Verstappen and finishing up in 2nd place. And then in 3rd place, it's Sergio Perez for Force India, getting a podium finish. His first podium of the season is coming this time up at Russia. Force India, he's been very consistent at the start of this season so far. He's had 2 4th places, a 6th place, and a 3rd place. And his teammates been very consistent as well, with 3 7th places and a 4th place. Round 5 is off to Barcelona for the Spanish Grand Prix. One of the Spaniards on the grid, Fernando Alonso, will be hoping to actually finally finish a race this time out, as so far his season has consisted of 3 DNFs and a DNS last time out in Russia. He'll be hoping to get some points on the board, but further up the grid, Kimi Raikkonen will be hoping to continue his very strong streak, and the 2 Red Bulls will be hoping to end his very good streak. Kimi Raikkonen has a great start to the weekend as he ends up taking pole position. However, he does suffer a retirement come race day, so he will not be scoring points. For the first time this season, Kimi Raikkonen will not be standing on the podium. Max Verstappen also ends up retiring from the race for his 2nd retirement of the season, and Daniel Ricciardo capitalizes on his rivals falling off the road, and he goes on to take his 1st race win of the season, as I just hit my shelf. Ahead of the 2 Force Indias, getting a double podium finish with 2 podiums in a row now for Sergio Perez, as he finishes up in 2nd place, and then Esteban Ocon claims his first podium in Formula 1 in P3. Force India, like I said, they're having a very strong start to this season. season. And further down the grid, Fernando Alonso in a McLaren car that wasn't great, let's be fair. The 2017 McLaren wasn't brilliant. He finally finishes a race, and not only does he finish a race, he scores a point in P10. Not quite as good as the other Spaniard on the grid who finishes in P5, Carlos Sainz, however, it's points nonetheless, well, a point. Now bode well for Fernando in getting off the ground in the championship as we take a look at how the standings are shaping up 5 rounds into the season. Kimi Raikkonen, after having, well, 4 podiums in the first 5 races, 3 wins in the first 5 races, he's leading the way on 80 points right now. Ahead of Sergio Perez, who his consistency has gained him 2nd place in the championship right now on 65 points. He is only 4 points ahead of the 2 Red Bulls who are tied on 61 points. However, I think Daniel Ricciardo would be ahead on countback. And now this is countback on starting positions, because both Red Bull drivers' results so far this season have consisted of a win, 2 second places and 2 DNFs. And the reason why I then go to starting positions is because Daniel Ricciardo has of course had a pole position, he got that in Bahrain, and Max Verstappen has not had a pole position. So Daniel Ricciardo is ahead on countback, he's in 3rd place on countback on 61 points. Max Verstappen is level with him, also on 61 points in 4th place. And then he has just under 20 points back to Esteban Ocon, who rounds off the top 5 right now on 45 points. There's a tie for 6th place as well between Felipe Massa and Carlos Sainz, both on 38 points, but Massa is ahead on countback because he's scored a couple podiums so far this season. They're in 6th and 7th, 38 points, and then 2 points further back from that you'll find Nico Hülkenberg for Renault on 36 points. We have yet another tie at the bottom end of the top 10 as well between Danny Kvyat for Toro Rosso and Romain Grosjean for Haas, both on 18 points, but Kvyat is ahead on countback once again. In the Constructors' Championship, it's Red Bull leading the way on 122 points, and they've got a 12-point gap back to Force India, who are having a rather good start to the season. Could they challenge Red Bull for the Constructors' Championship? We'll have to wait and see what happens. Ferrari are sitting in 3rd, well, Kimi's sitting in 3rd on 80 points. His points, as I always say when it's just one driver here. And then rounding off the top 5, you'll find Toro Rosso currently sitting in 4th place on 56 points, and then in 5th place, is currently Williams on 42 points. 6th place is 2 points further back from 5th place on 40 points, which is where Renault is sitting, and then 7th place is going the way of Haas. Well, Sauber are currently sitting on 14 points in 8th place, and then McLaren have just 2 points to their name in 9th. And now for round 6, it's off to the streets of Monte Carlo for the Monaco Grand Prix, a race that Kimi Raikkonen had a rather infamous moment at back in 2006 where he retired and then went and hung out on a yacht with his mates drinking beer. Well, this time out he wouldn't be doing that. Instead, he will be nabbing pole position. He might be doing it after the race actually, where he will be celebrating a race victory. He wins the Monaco Grand Prix, a race that everybody wants to win. He wins it this time out ahead of the 2 Red Bulls in 2nd and 3rd, who the Red Bulls do tend to go quite well in Monaco. They got their first podium ever in Monaco back in 2006, I believe it was. Daniel Ricciardo is in 2nd place, and then 3rd place is going the way of Max Verstappen. From Monaco, it's a quick trip across to Montreal, Canada for the Canadian Grand Prix. Kimi Raikkonen has been on pole the last 3 consecutive races, and he's going to make a 4th consecutive pole position this time out in Canada. As he takes pole position, however, he would not win the race. He wouldn't even be on the podium actually. For the first time this season, Kimi Raikkonen finishes a race but does not stand on the podium. He finishes in P4. The race win actually goes the way of Daniel Ricciardo, who gets his 2nd podium of the season, taking the race victory at the venue where he got his first race victory in 2014. He's ahead of the 2 Force India drivers in 2nd and 3rd, Perez and Ocon, once again rounding out the podium like the last time that Ricciardo won a race. And now we take to the streets of Azerbaijan for the first time it's ever known as the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, not the European Grand Prix like it was Kenta's in 2016. Kimi Raikkonen takes pole position in qualifying, continuing his very strong run of qualifying form. And in the Grand Prix, in real life, he did retire from the race. And I'm gonna take the Spain approach to this and roll with the DNF. And here's why. He wouldn't have made contact with Bottas on the opening lap because Bottas wouldn't have been there to make contact with. However, he did later get a puncture after the Force Indies had made contact on a safety car restart, and then that put him down the order, and he later retired from the race with, I think, an oil leak. I don't know if that was a oil leak was a result of like the Bottas contact or something like that, but we're gonna roll with the DNF, okay? So Kimi Raikkonen, for the 2nd time this season, he is not gonna finish the Grand Prix. Big opportunity then for Daniel Ricciardo to get some points on his rival, and he does just that. He wins the Grand Prix, he won it in real life, he still wins it here, and Lance Stroll has a much more comfortable run to 2nd place finish. A 2nd place finish he keeps this time, he doesn't lose it on the line to Bottas. And rounding off the podium is Esteban Ocon with his 2nd consecutive podium. That win for Daniel Ricciardo actually sees him take the lead in the Drivers' Championship by 12 12 points now. He has leapt ahead of Kimi Räikkönen from, what, 13 points behind him after the last race to now being 12 points ahead of him, so it's advantage for Ricciardo now in the championship. But from a street circuit, it's off to a permanent facility now. We're off to Austria for the Austrian Grand Prix. Kimi Räikkönen, 5 consecutive pole positions, becomes 6 consecutive pole positions this time out, as he takes pole position once again. However, once again, like the last race, it's not a race win. It's P2 for him come race day. Daniel Ricciardo at the Red Bull ring wins for Red Bull. 3 consecutive race wins for Daniel Ricciardo. Equally on the other side of the Red Bull garage, it's 3 consecutive DNFs for Verstappen. He's not having a very good time of it right now, honestly. But Daniel Ricciardo wins ahead of Kimi Räikkönen, finishing up in 2nd place. And in 3rd place, well, it wouldn't be an episode of this series without a bit of a wild podium finisher, to word it one way. This time out, it's Romain Grosjean finishing up in 3rd place. Haas have historically gone quite well at Austria, honestly. It's tended to be one of their stronger circuits, honestly, and he's proving that. P3 for Romain Grosjean, his first podium since the 2015 Belgium Grand Prix. The place where it all began for Formula 1 is up next for their 10th race of the season, Silverstone for the British Grand Prix, and Kimi Räikkönen will be making it 7 consecutive pole positions. He has been absolutely flying in qualifying this year. He has been on pole position for every single race so far, except for Bahrain, which is wild. And come race day, he would still be just as strong as he goes on to take his first race win since Monaco, just a few rounds ago, back in the 6th race of the season. He wins ahead of Max Verstappen in 2nd place and Daniel Ricciardo in 3rd. Given the championship, might Red Bull have swapped the cars? There is that chance they could have. There was a bit of a gap on track between them. They might have, they might not have. Who knows? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me with Red Bull, but whatever. And now for the final race before the summer break. It's off to Hungary. It's always the last race before the summer break. It is here, and Kimi Räikkönen has just equaled one of Ayrton Senna's records, and it's the record for the most consecutive pole positions. Räikkönen has now equaled the record at 8 consecutive poles. This man is unstoppable in qualifying this year. 8 consecutive poles. A total of 10 poles so far in the 11 races we've seen so far. Bloody Nora, man. But that pole position turns into a race win. He keeps on flying. Come race day, the Flying Finn, the Iceman, the Flying Finn Iceman. I don't know what this section has come to, but Kimi Räikkönen wins ahead of Max Verstappen for 2nd consecutive 2nd place. And we've got our 2nd wild podium of the season. Fernando Alonso gets on the podium for McLaren. His first podium in a couple of years. He's finishing off the podium in P3, and he scores the fastest lap as well. And now as everybody buggers off for the summer break, then let's have one look at the Drivers' Championship standings. See how things are shaping up. Kimi Räikkönen, after his last couple of race wins, the last couple of rounds, that's allowed him to retake the lead of the Drivers' Championship, also helped by Ricciardo's DNF in Hungary. He leads the championship again on 185 points to Ricciardo's 169. So just 16 points at the top of the championship is separating the top two. It's very close up there. It's also close in the battle for 2nd place. Sergio Perez, 3rd place, sorry. Sergio Perez is sitting in 3rd on 114 points. To Max Verstappen, his future Red Bull teammate, is just behind him on 112. 2 points separating them, and then Esteban Ocon rounds off the top 5 on 105 points. 6th place, you'll find Carlos Sainz for Toro Rosso sitting on 72 points, while in 7th place is 12 points further back from now on 60 points, with Felipe Massa in 7th place. 8th place is just 1 point behind that. Nico Hülkenberg is on 59 points, and then in 9th place is Romain Grosjean on 51 points, and then 1 point with the top 10 being rounded off currently by Lance Stroll on 36 points, who is joined by Paul di Resta as a teammate in Hungary. Di Resta, standing in for Felipe Massa, did not finish the race, but he was there. And Stoffel van Dorn also got joined by Jenson Button as a teammate back in Monaco. Jenson said he was going to pee in Fernando's seat. Well, he didn't do that. What he actually did was he punted Pascal Wehrlein up on his side to Portier and got a 3-place grid penalty that to this day in 2024 he is yet to serve. I swear, at what point are the FIA going to realise Jenson is never going to serve that penalty? And what are the chances when they do realise that they're going to give him a bloody fine? Can they do that? But here's a little new thing I'm throwing in here, a little bar chart. I say bar, well, that's not a bar chart, it's a line graph. I forget the name of this graph, but it's just a way to visualize the championship fight. This is how things stand. You see Räikkönen with the early advantage, but then from really Barcelona onwards, Ricciardo's been on a bit of a tear, really. You can see his projection up the way, and then it just kind of stops at Hungary with him having that DNF and Räikkönen taking back over the championship lead. So I just thought this was a good idea, you know, just visualize the championship. But speaking of championships, constructors time now, Red Bull are faring quite well there on 2 281 points leading the way. They've got a massive gap to Force India in second place still on 219 points. They're not that far ahead of Ferrari, 185 points is Raikkonen's points, but I do expect Force India to pull further ahead of Ferrari. Fourth place, you're going to find Toro Rosso sitting there on 94 points. They're having a very, very good season, but they're only 2 points clear of Williams, who've had a bit of a slower start to their season. Well, I say slow, they've gone podiums. They're on 92 points, so 2 points further back. A further 7 points further back from that is where you're going to find Haas sitting on 85 points, and 10 points back from that, you'll find Renault in 7th place on 75 points. 8th place is McLaren on 40 points. They've gotten themselves off the bottom of the table, which is where you're going to find Sauber now on 27 points. By the way, don't mind me, I throw in my classic mid one of these video you should subscribe messages, so yeah, if you're enjoying this, you should subscribe. Once again, here's a list of all these videos I've done. Up next, I'm planning to do 2013 without Red Bull or Vettel. I'm not quite sure which one yet, I haven't started working it out as I'm recording this, but we'll see which it'll be one of those two versions of 2013, we'll see what happens. And just to mention, while we're speaking about Red Bull, right now it is looking very likely that 2024 will get done at the end of the year. I haven't decided yet whether it's going to be without Red Bull or just without Max. That is entirely Checo dependent. But yeah, if you're enjoying this video and want us to keep up to date with more Formula 1 content from me, more of this series, more of my other content, then do hit the subscribe button. Leave a like on the video if you're enjoying it, really helps out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but let's get back to it. And now let's return for the summer break for the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps. Said to be Kimi Raikkonen's favourite circuit, and that's boding well for him as he sees himself breaking the record for the most consecutive pole positions. He takes pole for the 9th consecutive time, the 11th time this season. The man is unstoppable in qualifying so far. However, come race day, Daniel Ricciardo proves just a bit too quick for him, and Ricciardo goes on to take the race victory, something that he really needed to do. He really needed, after losing quite a bit of ground to Raikkonen in the last couple of rounds, Ricciardo needed to get this win, and he did, ahead of Raikkonen, who has to settle for 2nd place. And then 3rd place, well, he cannot get a podium in real life. But in this series, it wouldn't be one of these videos without him on the podium. It's Nico Hülkenberg. He always appears on the podium somewhere. I think there's only like 2 or 3 of these videos where Hülkenberg didn't get a podium, 2 or 3 of these scenarios where he didn't end up on the podium in them. Other than that, he seems to always be on the podium in the series. But Hülkenberg's podium woes in real life and joys here aside, we're heading off now to Monza, Ferrari's home race for the Italian Grand Prix. Kimi Raikkonen went quite well in qualifying in Belgium last time out, which given Belgium's high speed, you'd think that might bode him quite well for Monza. Well, actually, it ended up being the 2 Red Bulls locking out spots 1 and 2 in qualifying. Max Verstappen taking the fastest spot in qualifying, Daniel Ricciardo alongside him. However, due to grid penalties for both of them, it actually ends up being Lance Stroll claiming pole position for this round. The 19-year-old finding himself on pole for the first time ever in his Formula 1 career, but come race day, Daniel Ricciardo will come surging back through the field to take a 2nd consecutive race win, his 5th win of the season, ahead of Raikkonen finishing in P2, while Max Verstappen only manages to claim P7, while the podium ends up being rounded off by Esteban Ocon claiming his 3rd podium finish of the season, his 3rd P3 of the season. Ricciardo getting some really good ground here in the championship, you know, a couple of wins in a row. He's trying to claw this back. I said this wasn't over, you know, anything could happen in the second half of the season. And as we head on now to the Singapore Grand Prix, that is going to continue. Because I did have a bit of a debate with myself when working this out of would that collision on the opening lap still happen. Of course, the Ferraris, or well, Ferrari here in this case, and Verstappen. Ultimately, I've decided with Verstappen starting on pole position this time, and he claims it for this Grand Prix, and Kimi Raikkonen still starting directly behind him in P3. We're gonna run with the collision still happens. Kimi Raikkonen retiring from the race along with Max Verstappen, and it's Daniel Ricciardo who gets the benefit from it. He takes the race victory. Huge benefit for him in the championship. The championship has been blown wide open now with that race win for Daniel Ricciardo. Carlos Sainz gets his 1st podium this race out as well for Toro Rosso, sorry. And as he's only got a couple races left with Toro Rosso before he jumps over and joins Renault, he's getting his 1st podium in 2nd place. Toro Rosso's 1st podium since, what, 2008. And then 3rd place is heading the way of Sergio Perez. Force India, 2 races, 2 podiums in a row for them now. And elsewhere on the grid, Jolyon Palmer is getting his best finish of the season, and it is quite frankly so high in the order, I think he might get a nosebleed. And as we head on now over to Malaysia, Kimi Raikkonen is going to be hoping to try and have a strong race to try and bounce back from that DNF in Singapore. And he starts it well with pole position. However, he ends up not even starting the Grand Prix, which is another blow for him in his championship. His championship kind of derailing a little bit here, as he was due to start from pole position, but that pole position kind of comes to nothing as it's a DNS against his name. And while it's not Ricciardo that takes the win, he does finish in second place behind his teammate Max Verstappen. Given the championship, Red Bull very well could have, you know, prioritized Ricciardo in this race, but given in real life, they finished, what, 22 seconds apart? I'm not entirely sure if they would have held Max back that much, because he seemed to be pretty freaking quick that afternoon. I'm still running with it would have been Verstappen winning and then Ricciardo in second. And I mean, Ricciardo's still outscoring Raikkonen by 18 points, so 7 exports could have been handy. This is just my working out because the gap between them in real life was so big that afternoon. We're running with that as Sergio Perez, a future Red Bull driver, rounds off the podium. As Toro Rosso start piss-arsing about with drivers, as they can Danny Kvyat, and bring in Pierre Gasly, who finishes his debut race in Formula 1 in P11. But now, after Raikkonen's misfortunes of 2 non-scores in a row, let's have a look at the championship, because he is quite a ways off the lead of the championship now. The lead of the championship is Daniel Ricciardo on 262 points to Kimi Raikkonen on 221. It's a 41 point gap at the top of the table. Raikkonen has a very, very big lead at this stage of the season. I believe at this stage of the season in real life, then Hamilton had a similar lead to Vettel, actually. But this ain't over yet, so just you wait. We still have, 5 races to go. Anything can happen in those remaining 5 races. The battle for third place is raging on, with Sergio Perez sitting in third place, still on 152 points. Max Verstappen is 9 points behind him on 143 points. With the other Force India of Esteban Ocon currently rounding out the top 5 on 138 points. 6th place, you'll find Carlos Sainz, who is coming to the end of his Toro Rosso time. He has one more race with Toro Rosso left. He's on 96 points, 6 points ahead of Felipe Massa on 90 points in 7th place. 8th place is Sainz's future teammate Nico Hülkenberg on 75 points. Then finally, it's a tie at the bottom end of the top 10 between Grosjean and Stroll, both on 70 points. Here's the chart. Once again, you can see how things have opened up really for Ricciardo, and he's gone on another very, very strong run of form, while Raikkonen's hit a couple of difficulties with Ferrari. Ferrari still hitting the mid-late season difficulties that they actually faced. We'll have to wait and see if they actually can pick it up, unlike real life where they couldn't. But this is how it's looking right now in chart form. And in terms of the Constructors' Championship, well, Red Bull are not that far away from clinching it. They're on 405 points. To Force India is 290. It's over 100 points between them now. And Force India have about 60-70 points or so back to Ferrari on 221. Williams are in 4th place now on 160 points. Well, 5th place is going the way of Toro Rosso. They've slipped back a place to 5th place now in the championship on 122 points. 6th place, you'll find Haas hanging out there on 110 points. Only 6 points separates them and Renault, who are on 104 points in 7th place, while 8th and 9th is still McLaren and Sauber respectively on 66 and 28 points. And now let's head on over to Suzuka, a track everybody loves. The Japanese fans seem, honestly, this is a race that I really want to go to someday, because even just for the fact that the atmosphere seems amazing at Suzuka. The Japanese fans seem absolutely fantastic. Daniel Ricciardo was opening up quite a lead in the championship, and he ends up taking pole position this time out. His first pole position since Bahrain. This season really seems to be one where he hasn't been that bad in qualifying, but he's just been a bit better in the races really, because this is only his 2nd pole position of the season, and that bodes in welcome race days. He takes the race win ahead of Max Verstappen, another Red Bull 1-2. In real life, they did finish the other way around, but given the gap between them wasn't as big, it was like 7 or 8 seconds, I think, between them on the line. And I do think Red Bull would have prioritized Ricciardo this time out. They would have prioritized him, and if Verstappen was ahead, they would have swapped him, I feel like, just because of the way of the championship and the gap wasn't so big. This is just a long way to say that I think they would have prioritized Ricciardo, you know? So Ricciardo taking the race victory ahead of Max Verstappen in 2nd place, and then Kimi Raikkonen is on the podium. He's back on the podium. This season, except for Canada, he's either finished on the podium or retired, or not even started the race. But he's finishing up in 3rd place as Carlos Sainz suffers a DNF in his last ever ever race for Toro Rosso. Now we make a hop, skip and a jump across to the land of the free and the home of the brave. It's a country that Daniel Ricciardo absolutely loves, and it's a country that sees Carlos Sainz making his debut for Renault as he steps on over there, and Danny Kvyat makes a one-off return for Toro Rosso and Brendan Hartley makes his debut as Pierre Gasly is off in Japan finishing off his Super Formula season. Or well, he was meant to be, but then of course that last weekend got cancelled due to bad weather. But also Red Bull can wrap up the Constructors' Championship today with them sitting on 448 points and Force India on 312 and 129 points left available as a score after this race. If the gap between them is 129 points or more after this race, then well, Red Bull have done it, they will be Constructors' Champions. But I mentioned Daniel Ricciardo absolutely loves the USA, and he loves it in qualifying clearly, as he ends up taking pole position, which bodes him well. However, come race day, it all comes undone for him. All the hard work from Saturday is for nothing, as he ends up retiring from the race, and Kimi Raikkonen takes the benefit, and he jumps at the chance to get some massive points gained on his rival, as he takes the race win, his first race victory since Hungary. He's getting his championship back on track here, well, trying to, and this race win is going to be a long way towards making that happen. As Max Verstappen's second place finish, that 18 points is enough for Red Bull to clinch the Constructors' Championship. Force India do outscore them. They score 25 points with Esteban Ocon finishing up in third place and Sergio Perez finishing in fifth, but the gap was big enough coming into the weekend that Red Bull can get outscored by Force India by 7 points and still have a big enough gap to claim the Constructors' Championship. So they're Constructors' Champions of the season. That's all done with, and now Red Bull can put their sole focus really onto Ricciardo for the Drivers' Championship. And now we head off to Mexico for the Mexican Grand Prix. The gap in the championship is still a lot to play for. Anything could happen. It could swing any which way. But it's Max Verstappen taking pole position. It isn't either of Ricciardo or Raikkonen. It's Verstappen who claims pole position. He tends to go very, very well in Mexico. This seems to be just one of the tracks that it just clicks for him. And he ends up taking pole position this time out. He goes on to take the race victory as well, which is going to be beneficial for Red Bull. Verstappen taking points off of Raikkonen, who finishes in second place. Crucially, that he's taking points off of him because Ricciardo retires once again. He suffers his second retirement in a row. His championship now coming undone. First it was Raikkonen's championship challenge coming undone a bit. He's gathering himself together on that front, and now Ricciardo's is coming undone here in the late stages, really when you do not want it to be coming undone. If you want it to come undone at any point, do it early in the season because then you can still bounce back. Late in the season, you can't really do too much, you know? But while it's a Red Bull and Ferrari finishing 1 and 2, P3 ends up going the way of Esteban Ocon. Once again, Force India proving to be really best of the rest right now. Or well, they have been all season. And further down the grid at Toro Rosso, Brendan Hartley scored his debut points in Formula 1 on his debut, actually, last time out at USA. He's still in the car here. Pierre Gasly has returned as well, and he takes his first ever points in Formula 1, this time out at Mexico City. But now let's head on over to the penultimate round of the season, the Brazilian Grand Prix, one of the most loved races on the calendar, one of the most loved tracks on the calendar, a track that a lot of people would love to see return as the season finale. Personally, I don't agree, because I kind of prefer the last race being evening/night races, but that's just my personal preference, and if you think Brazil should be the last race, absolutely fine. I can see why you would want that, because it tends to be a pretty good race. But the championship can be wrapped up today, with Daniel Ricciardo leading it currently on 287 points, to Raikkonen's 279. The gap is 8 points at the top of the table, and Ricciardo can win the championship if he wins the race with Raikkonen finishing 7th or lower, or if Ricciardo finishes 2nd with Raikkonen failing to score. If either of those two things happen, then Ricciardo is going to be world champion in this season for Red Bull Racing. If neither of those things happen, then we rumble it on to a last race finale decider. Regardless of whichever one it is, this is further than the championship fight got in real life in 2017. But Kimi Raikkonen does his utmost to make sure we do go to a final race decider. As he claims pole position in qualifying come race day, he's able to translate that pole position into a race victory, taking maximum points in the Grand Prix, while Daniel Ricciardo suffers a spin early in the race and then ends up only being able to come back to third, while Max Verstappen finishes ahead of him in second place. Might Red Bull have slowed Max down and swapped the cars? Well, they might have, but they might not have. The gap was, 15 seconds in real life or something like that? Either way, we're gonna run with it like this. Gap is now at the top of the table, heading into the final race. 2 points in Raikkonen's favour. 302 points plays 304. It's very, very tight up at the top. It's all still to play for. You can see how Raikkonen was able to close up the last few rounds, getting his challenge back on track, trying to, I don't know, find some competence, really, in the team. I'm sorry, Ferrari, I'm sorry. But you guys know what I mean. It's very close. Ferrari had there was a few slip-ups here and there in the season, but we'll have to see what happens come the final round of the season. Max Verstappen is confirmed in 3rd place, but there's still other battles going on. The battle for 4th place is raging on between the two Force India drivers. 190 points for Sergio Perez, plays 180 points for his teammate Esteban Ocon. Those two have been going at it all season, and that is continuing on right to the death. His advantage Perez at the moment, but can Ocon do enough to try and overhaul his teammate in the final race of the season and get 4th place? We'll have to wait and see. Felipe Massa is also locked in a head-to-head battle with Carlos Sainz, now driving for Renault. He sits 6 points behind the Brazilian driver, 118 points for Massa versus 112 for Sainz. It's a bit closer there. Sainz could come out on top, you know, but we'll have to wait and see. Well, his teammate Nico Hülkenberg is locked in a battle for 8th place with Stroll and Grosjean. His advantage Stroll at the moment on 86 points, 5 ahead of Hülkenberg, who has a further 5 points behind that to Romain Grosjean. So we've got a 3-way scrap going on there at the bottom end of the top 10, and then you have the rest of the grid. And in the Constructors' Championship, the top 4 positions are confirmed, with Red Bull, Force India, Ferrari and Williams all confirmed on 524, 370, 304 and 204 respectively at the moment. However, there's still stuff to play for, with the bottom 2 also confirmed, by the way, on 29 and 88 respectively. The battle for 5th place, though, rages on. It's advantage Toro Rosso heading into it on 133 points. With their new lineup of Gasly and Hartley, they'll be aiming to try and do enough to try and hold on to that 5th place for the team. But they've only got 1 point back to Haas on 132, and they themselves are only 5 points ahead of Renault on 127. So it's very close between those 3 teams, and it's going to be interesting to see who's able to come out on top. And now let's head on to the final race of the season, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The championship deciding race, only 2 points separate the top 2 in the championship. Ricardo is behind by 2 points, and in qualifying he's doing everything he possibly can to try and give himself the best possible opportunity of claiming the championship come the race day by getting his car onto pole position, which is a brilliant start. But like the last time he was on pole position, comes to nothing as it ends in a heartbreak for Daniel Ricciardo with mechanical failure knocking him out of the race, which means there's nothing he can do but watch as Kimi Raikkonen goes on to win the race and the championship. He did not need to win the race, given he was already ahead in the standings, but the race win will be nice for him anyway, as he claims his second/third, if you're counting this series as one big alternate universe, which I guess he could. He's claiming the championship either way. Kimi Raikkonen is getting Ferrari on top in 2017. He's doing what Sebastian Vettel couldn't do in 2017. Sorry, Seb. Max Verstappen finishes up the race in 2nd place, although he was already confirmed to finishing in 3rd anyway, so it's just a nice 2nd place for him to finish off the season. But 3rd place, and in the battle for 8th place, Nico Hülkenberg ends up coming out on top there with the 3rd place finish, rounding off the podium spots. He managed to jump ahead of Lance Stroll and clinch 8th place in the Drivers' Championship, while Grosjean will have to settle for an 8th place finish, while Stroll fails to score. In the Massa Sainz battle, then Carlos Sainz ends up retiring from the race, while Felipe Massa's 7th place finish sees him good on really solidating that 6th place in the championship. And in the battle of the Force Indias, then it ends up being Sergio Perez with a 4th place finish, able to stay ahead of his teammate Esteban Ocon, who has a settle for 5th place. And now let's have one final look at the championship, how things all shaped up. Kimi Raikkonen is your champion on 329 points. Daniel Ricciardo's gonna have to settle for 2nd place on 302 points. Max Verstappen is in 3rd place on 240 points, while the 2 Force India boys are rounding off the top 5. Sergio Perez in 4th on 202 points to Esteban Ocon's 190. Felipe Massa's in 6th place on 124 points, 12 ahead of Carlos Sainz on 112 in 7th place. 8th place, you'll find Nico Hülkenberg hanging out, the first driver to not break 100 points this season on 96 points, but Lance Stroll is in 9th place on 86 points, and Romain Grosjean rounds out the top 10 on 80 points. His teammate Kevin Magnussen is the first driver outside the top 10 on 57 points, while Fernando Alonso is on 54 points, 3 points back from that, and is a further 10 points behind Alonso is where you're going to find Stoffel van Dorn, his teammate, scoring 44 points this season. Danny Kvyat scores 33 points in 14th place, while it's just 3 points further back to Jolyon Palmer, who is finishing up in 15th place on 30 points. Pascal Wehrlein, in his final season in Formula 1, scores 19 points in 16th place, while Marcus Ericsson scores only 8 points in 17th place. Pierre Gasly came in late in the season, but managed to clock up 3 points on the board to his name in 18th place, which is one more than Antonio Giovinazzi scored, scoring 2 points in 19th place, while Brendan Hartley is the last of the point scorers with 1 solitary point scored at the US Grand Prix, while Jenson Button and Paul di Resta are not classified because they didn't even finish the respective races they did. Here's one last look at the chart that I made up. You can see Kimi Räikkönen there just getting ahead right at the very end of the things. He got ahead just at the penultimate race, then he managed to stay ahead into the final race as Ricciardo had that mechanical failure. You can see all the swings in the standings. Räikkönen's early lead, Ricciardo's resurgence, Ricciardo's flatline, and Räikkönen getting ahead. Then Räikkönen flatlining, or well, toward it one way of going a bit stagnant, might be a better way toward it, and Ricciardo taking over once again with another strong run, but then it all just fell apart for him late in the season when you don't want it to fall apart. But it went better for Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship as they come out on top on 542 points. The Force India finishing up in second place after a strong season sees them score 392 points. Ferrari are finishing in third place on 329 points. Raikkonen managed to haul Ferrari still to the top 3, while Williams have to sell for fourth on 210 points. In the battle between Renault, Haas and Toro Rosso, as you may have been able to guess from Hülkenberg's third place finish, that manages to haul Renault up into 5th place in the championship. They end up leapfrogging both of their rivals to score 142 points in total and claim 5th place in the championship, while Haas also managed to jump Toro Rosso with Grosjean's finish in the points on 137 points, and Toro Rosso are gonna have to settle for 7th place in the end after slipping backwards. They did not score in the final round, and that is cost them a lot in the championship. Meanwhile, it's still McLaren and Sauber in 8th and 9th on 98 points and 29 respectively. And with that, 2017 without Mercedes or Sebastian Vettel is at its end. That's what would have happened. Kimi Räikkönen wins the championship. Red Bull Racing win the Constructors' Championship. That was a pretty good season. That one was really good. I enjoyed that one. Up next is one that many people have been asking for, 2013. Haven't decided yet whether it's without Vettel or Red Bull as a whole. At the moment, I may be leaning more towards without Vettel, but I'll see which one I think when I come to work it out. I think without just Vettel might be quite good, but we'll see. But that's for another day. For now, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new around here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.